So take a good seat, do a nice manual inner rotation of the thighs. The tailbone moves down and you sit up on enough blankets or bolster or blocks and sitting any way that's comfortable. Chairs are always an option. Now the dogs come in because you're quieting down. I love it. Get lots of kisses. So I was thinking about this universal father energy provides this behind the scenes support that we need to grow in our own light. So if you had a great relationship with your father, that's wonderful. I actually did, and I feel very happy about that. But if you didn't, it's not a time to feel bad about it or dredge all that up, but to think more about the universal father energy, the sort of the mythical or archetypal father energy. It's interesting that in the myths and legends, when you search for mother kinds of legends in all cultures, there's all kinds in religions, there's all kinds of mother images. Christian religion, there's the Mother Mary, and the and certainly the Hindu pantheon has all of these forms of motherness, from sweetness to elegant and educated and artsy and fierce and strong, and all kinds of dimensions of mother. But you don't see as much, and the father is a little more singular. I mean, there's a lot of male energies, but the father energy. In fact, I was looking at, so when you do see it in mythology, it's not always really good. Like Kronos, Kronos is he was the father of time, and he ate all his kids until his last born, who happened to be Zeus, killed him. So, you got some of these like father, and what's the, killed your father, married your mother, Oedipus, right? And then of course you look in the Old Testament, and those father relationships were kind of tortured, like Abraham and Eli and Samuel and David, they're a little tortured. When you go into nature, then you get a little more interesting for me, a little more helpful, not quite as Jungian or Freudian, but you get Father Sky, Father Sun. And Father Sky is steadfastly watching, keeping the big picture in view. The father who provides, but does so behind the scenes. When we are steady in our responsibility to ourselves, then we can fully step into our light. And there's the Father Sun. So Surya in Sanskrit is sun. So Surya Namaskar, sun salutations. And that's similar. And in the Hindu pantheon, Surya, the god of sun, is similar to Helios in the Greek. They ride the chariot. The sun rides over the sky as a chariot. So when we think about how does this help us in our practice, like on and off the mat, it's a steadfastness, it's a courage. We stand steady in our strength so that we can step into the light. We can be more open. And that's kind of the classic role of the father. Not like any of us had human fathers who understood this or knew about this, but the father image. And think about, you had father figures throughout your life, and they may not have all been male, they might have been female as well, but that father energy of supporting you behind the scenes, of encouraging you to step out into your light. I've had some of my students before, I consult a lot of museum professionals in the field, and some of them have been my graduate students, and others have just been colleagues I've gotten to know. And this one woman wrote me this lovely letter. She's taking over, she's been a director of several museums, and she's moving to, in nature and science, she's moving to Arkansas, I think, soon. And she just said, I want you to know that you were the one that sat me down and said, you can reach for more, you are more, go for more. And she said, no one had ever pushed me like that. And I thought, well, that's a father energy to say, here, I'm behind the scenes, I'll support you as you need, I'll give you all the moral support you need, but you need to step out into your light. And for me, that's what yoga's always done for me, is that it's helped me be strong, and encourage me to be more, to step out and do things that maybe I'm not always feeling like I'm ready to do. So when we allow that steadfastness, our internal Father energy, to support us, we're able to move into our heart, and we realize our heart is just light filled, and we can be more, brighter, fuller. So draw the palms together in front of the heart center. Bring your awareness to your breath. With each inhale, you fill belly, ribs, and chest. Exhale, draw into the center and lengthen. And as you breathe, see the breath as light, winding its way into every little corner of your body, the tight spots, the cranky spots, and into those places in your mind, your spirit, that might be a little down. Not that we always have to be light chasers and feel all happy, but to just know that when we have those low spots, there is still light there. You can inhale, exhale, cleansing breath. And inhale to Om. Release your hands. Flutter your eyes open. Oh, let's work the feet. So let me slide back a bit. This is your foundation. So you can sit here. We do it with balls usually on Thursday morning, but let's do it with just the feet. So you can either straighten or bend the knee. From the bottom of the foot, take the opposite hand and thread finger, toe, and push it all the way through. We used to do this a long time ago. I haven't done it in a while in class. And then shake hands with the foot, go round and round, side to side, back and forth. And pause and spread the fingers wide. Relax the fingers and squeeze with the toes. Relax the toes, spread the fingers. Relax the fingers, squeeze with the toes. So you're going toe splits and squeezes, toe splits and squeezes. And spread the toes, bring the hands out, and then do a toe turn and pull. So you're doing this little piggy went to market with each toe from the base, you're spinning it and then kind of rubbing and squeezing the tip. And when I do this, I'm always saying, yeah, it's time for another pedicure. Begin to rub out the bottom of the foot, or you can use the knuckles to rake down into the arch, particularly the inner arch, the outer arch. And then just give it a little round of applause. Smack it on the top and the bottom. Yeah, you can do like that. Just whack it. And release. And notice even the color changes on the skin, and the whole leg feels a little bit different. Change sides. Oh, interlace, toe weaving. And then begin to shake hands or wiggle the foot side to side, back and forth. Let's get the toe box flexible, especially if you've been walking a lot. The feet will get tight and tense. So you're working that toe box, the ball of the foot is supposed to be the most flexible. And yet it's the one that as we get old, it gets, not that any of you are old, I am, but at any rate, as you get older, it begins to tighten up a bit. And then spread the toes, nice toe splits. Spread the fingers, so the toes spread. Then relax the fingers, squeeze with the toes. Relax the toes and spread with the fingers. And go back and forth a few times, squeezing, stretching, squeezing, stretching. Stretching the muscles, the skin in between the toes. And then when the toes are spread, try to keep them spread, take the fingers out, and then toe turn and pull. So lately, I don't know, it's this sort of humidity and the storms, but I've been feeling really like all I want to do is nap. I just want to be the cat and roll up and nap the whole time. My energy has been lower. Begin to rake or rub down the foot. Work into the arch. And then wake it up. And stretch it out. Only the rest of my body felt as awake as my feet do. Doesn't that feel nice? Yeah. All right, come to hands and knees. Pad your knees as you wish. And assume the position. Round and arch the back. Cat-cow with the breath. Make it as big as you want or keep it steady. You can start to shift forward more, shift back more, or keep it in regular cat-cow. Just explore the body, stretch it out. And breathe, keep the breath flowing. Once you start to hold the breath, the whole body kind of seizes up. And the next time you come through center, pause, tuck the toes of the right foot, slide it back, lift the right leg, just hip height, keep the sacrum stable, level, and stretch the opposite arm forward. Breathe. Bend the right leg and press the sole of the foot and the inner edge of the right thigh up towards the ceiling. You can stretch the arm back, that's position 1, and stay here and open from here. In fact, you can put the hand on the hip and open from here, or take hold of the foot and let it kick you open. Your choice, breathe. Keep clawing with your standing hand, not rocking out to the outside heel of the palm, and release. Knees apart, toes together, rest back. Oh, something's going on there. Next, inhale, come back up to center. Tuck the toes of the left foot, slide it out. Lift the left leg, just hip height. The inner edge of the left thigh moves up faster. The outer left hip moves down. The left foot still engaged, like it's pressing against a wall. Stretch the opposite arm forward. Breathe. Steady here. So steadiness is not stock still. You'll feel yourself moving, but the breath is steady. Then bend the left knee, lift the inner edge of the left thigh more. The first stage is the right hand's on the hip, and you open here without letting the left knee come down. Keep pressing it up. That's plenty of work. If you have access to hold the foot, kick the foot into the hand. On your inhale, you lengthen from tailbone to spine, crown of head, and exhale, twist a little deeper. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, twist. Next, inhale, release. Knees apart, toes together. Rest back, child's pose. Enjoy your breath. To work with some of the shoulder stuff, on your hands and knees, take your block. And if you don't have a block, that's okay. Do you want a cleaned block? I can spray it for you, Debbie. I can do it. Hang on, I'll get it for you. Actually, I'll let you do it if you want to. There you go. Use as many as you want. All right, take a block. So there's a couple of ways that you can work the hands. You can work the hands on either side of the block. And that's the first way we'll do it, with the baby finger on the floor and the side of the wrist on the floor. So walk your knees just a little bit behind the hips. Hug the block, squeeze with the hands, hug the elbows in towards the midline until you feel this into the shoulder blades. Not by hunching the shoulders, but drawing the shoulder blades down the back. Shift your hips back to where they come now over the knees. Oh, and the forehead can rest maybe on the floor or maybe on another block, or the head can just stay up as long as there's very little tension in the neck. And you'll notice this. I feel this really tight today. I feel it all along the side of the arms even, and into the shoulder blades. So find the hug here. Lift the head just enough to clear the floor. Gaze up through your eyebrows, tuck your toes as you press into the forearms and hug the block even more. Lift your knees just 1/4 of an inch. Keep the heart moving back towards the knees. Inhale, hug in. Exhale, open the heart more towards the knees, through the shoulders, and release. Tuck your toes, walk your hands back and sit on your toes. Toe torture. This only feels better after I do it more and more and more. Interlace the hands and open. Oh. Feel the stretch across the front of the chest. So Mary, being in the garden a lot, there's a lot of rounding, so the front chest gets quite tight, I'd find anyway. And release. Then you can change to position 2. Again, if any strain in the shoulders, this way you're making an L with the thumb and the index finger, and this is on the floor this way. It's just a little more open. If it hurts at any point, go back to the palms on the outside of the block. Now hug the block with your index, the base of your index finger. Press the palms down, press the inner wrist down a lot. Hug the forearms towards each other and shift back. So the hips are right over the knees, not behind the knees. Forehead either on the floor, on another block, or just up slightly. The heart is moving towards the knees, but the inner armpits are moving towards the block. See if you can figure that one out. And from here, with the head lifted just slightly, tuck your toes. Keep the heart moving back towards your knees, the inner armpits moving towards the block and out, and just lift your knees 1/4 of an inch. Press into the forearms to move the heart back more towards your knees, and just hover. Breathe, steadiness, deep work, and release. Rest back in child's, well, actually walk your hands back towards your knees, tuck your toes, and interlace the hands again, stretch the front. Come into a wide hands and knees, preparing for downward facing dog. Tuck your toes, claw the floor, and lift your hips, walk your dog, pedal it out. Can always do dog at the wall if you want, for half forward bend, or any variation that works for you. Next, exhale, walk your hands back to your toes, forward bend at the back of your mat. And here, some easy forward bends with the breath. You inhale, stretch the heart forward slightly. Exhale, fold more deeply. Inhale, stretch the heart forward. Exhale, fold. The knees can be soft. Don't strip anything this early. And next, inhale, come halfway up, hands on the hips, shrug the shoulders, lift the head of the arm bones, and on your next inhale, press down, rise up. Oh, and release. Yeah, I have got something going on with my right SI as well. It's just that whole bum side feels the low back. All right, step to the top of your mat. Blocks if you need them, not required if you, huh? Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah, so then I find though that after I move a bit, it starts to feel better. Go figure, it's the sitting that kills it. All right, feet parallel, lift all 10 toes. You guys know the drill. Press down through the 4 corners of the feet. The ball of the foot nearest the big toe presses down, energetically lift your inner arch, press your inner heel. Keep that, notice what's pulling up the legs. Then fan from the inner heel to the ball of the foot nearest the baby toe. Keep the baby toe up, but the ball of the foot's down. Energetically lift your outer arch and tack the 4th point down the outer heel. Press the shins energetically forward as you gently squeeze the heels to the midline. They don't move, but when you squeeze the heels to the midline, it's a seesaw principle. The ankles are moving towards each other and the inner knees start to move a little bit apart. Inner thighs move back, tailbone down, exhale, bow forward. Oh. Inhale, stretch your right leg back, straight leg lunge. Steady, hands on the front thigh. So steady the legs. If your back foot is too close in behind the front foot, you'll be playing tightrope land. If you step it over, it's much steadier. Scissor in. Front knee is right over the ankle. Stretch the arms up. The left hand grabs the right wrist and you arc over to your left towards your front leg side. Oh. The legs have to be strong. If the legs give way, then you start to pull into the back. So the legs are quite strong and you're arcing over. Change the grip and arc over to the other side. Keep that, inhale back up. Kind of 747 down where you're balancing. Breathe, hop the back leg up a bit and just lift it off the floor. It doesn't have to come far until you start to feel the lack of steadiness, and bend and straighten the standing leg. The lifted leg might tap down occasionally to make sure you don't do a double flip. Oh, and then step back, downward facing dog. That works the hip. Step your right foot forward, straight leg lunge. Scissor the legs, hands come to the top thigh, top of your right thigh. Inner thighs move back, tailbone down. Inhale, from the core of the pelvis, send the energy down through the legs and up through the arms. Oh. Your front leg hand, your right arm takes hold of the left wrist and you arc over to the right. The tendency here will be to wing your right knee into the midline. So you find a steadiness there, keeping the knee pointing straight ahead. Next, inhale, rise back up to center, switch the grip. Exhale to the left, away from the front leg side. Inhale, back to center. Come into 747, lift the head of the arm bones. Hop your back foot up a little bit so you put all your weight on your right leg. On your inhale, stand and straightenish the legs so the left toes come off the floor. Exhale, little bend. Exhale, little straighten. Can be very tiny. You don't have to lift the left leg way high, just clear the floor. The arms can be out in the side, that almost gives you a little more balance. Whew. And then release back to downward facing dog. Shift forward, plank pose. Lower down, knees, chest, and chin all the way to the floor. Take a breath, settle in. Come up into Sphinx pose. Press the hands into the earth, press the forearms, and squeeze a real or an imaginary block. So here's where you can do the same pressing here. gives you more integrity up through the shoulders, because a lot of times we just forget and let the hands go. So you steady in, either hugging to the outside or hugging to the midline. Tuck your toes, lift your hips and bump your knees and the feet a little bit forward. So we start to move into the core work on the plank. Hug the block, soften between the shoulder blades. Hug the block, soften between the shoulder blades. On your next inhale, hug an imaginary block between your knees and just lift your knees about 1/4 of an inch off the floor. Keep the heart soft and the hips raised, and breathe. Woo. And then just for variation, try rolling to the hips over to the right, but the chest is staying facing the front, the elbows, and then over to the left. Oh, to get the obliques in, and lower down all the way to the floor. Make a pillow with your hands, windshield wiper the legs. And while we're here on the belly, stretch the legs long behind you, click all 10 toenails on the floor, inner thighs lift up to the ceiling as the tailbone lengthens. It's as though you're trying to lift your belly button off the floor. Interlace the hands behind the back, and with the tailbone is really strong and you're hugging an imaginary block between your shins, between your heels, lift the upper body up. Now you'll notice the baby toe side of the foot wants to curl immediately away from the floor. See if you can click the baby toenail back to the floor. Baby toenail. Inhale, lift a little bit. Exhale, you lower a tiny bit. Inhale, lift. It's a small movement. And release. Plant your hands. Tuck your toes. Downward facing dog. There's time. Okay. Walk your hand, on your next exhale, walk your hands back to your toes, forward bend at the back of your mat.
Mariana, I can't believe you could talk and do that at the same time.
Well, you heard me. Yeah, it was like work. And that's how, I don't hold the poses as long when I have to do them. Have you noticed that? Inhale halfway up, shrug the shoulders, lift the head of the arm bones, and on your next inhale, rise up. Because I feel your pain at every stage. All right, take a wide stance. And you can face any way you want to, Debbie, or yeah, probably face in, you can see me still. Feet parallel, little pigeon-toed. Have a block in front of you here. Do a wide-legged twist. Oh. So again, lift all 10 toes and notice the corners of the feet that tend to take most of the weight in a wide-legged stance are the inner corners. So we want to overcorrect a tiny bit, not roll off the inner corners because it's kind of impossible, but work to the outer corners as well. Hug the feet towards each other. Soften the knees, so you're pressing the shins energetically forward, inner thighs move back. Tailbone comes slightly forward towards the pubic bone, but the sits bones lift, come where you're parallel with the floor. The left hand's on the block, the right hand is on your outer right hip crease. Now what will happen here as we twist towards the right, the left hip will follow. So imagine someone's pulling your inner left thigh back to the left. And as you inhale, lengthen the spine. Exhale, spin just the ribs. Notice if you start to collapse the opposite hip, you'll feel it in the inner knee. So you won't twist as far, and that's all right. So with each inhale, you strengthen and lengthen. So you hug the feet in more and lengthen the spine. Each exhale, the twist comes a little bit more in the ribs, the upper torso. Keep pulling your opposite inner thigh back, opposite hip wants to collapse. Keep the sacrum stable. On your next inhale, come back to center. Change hands. So while you have a little bit of weight on the hand, you can bottom out, but it tends to throw all your weight into it. I like to come up on the fingertips and pull away from the earth. I'm using it as a balance point, but not a weight, not much weight bearing at all. The legs are doing the weight bearing. Steady the legs, hug into the midline. Inner thighs move back, particularly your right side now. And as you inhale, as much as you're pulling the low belly and the inner left thigh, inner right thigh back to the right, the ribs start to move towards the left. Inhale, lengthen and strengthen. Exhale, soften into the twist. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, twist. Inner belly is moving back the opposite way that the torso is facing. Next inhale, release back to center. You can have the hands on the blocks and do a regular sort of a half forward bend, or if it's in your wheelhouse, walk the hands back in between the feet. Micro bend your knees, inner thighs move back and stretch the crown of the head towards the floor, deep forward bend. Lift the head of the arm bones. Shoulder blades crawl back up the back so they're not hanging down. Oh, inhale, come up, heel toe, your feet in, hands on your hips. Next inhale, come all the way to standing and rise up. Release, shake off. Woo. Those, do a nice slow forward bend. That kind of starts to work everything out. So moving the class may be a little slower today. Maybe it's because of me. I'd like to say it's because of all of what I think you need, but it's more for me. All right. Let's do one more standing pose. Take a wide stance. We'll do triangle pose. Again, have a block if you want it. The block can be on the inside. So turn your right toes out. The left foot is outer edge is parallel with the short edge of the mat. Left toes pointing towards the short edge of the mat. Scissor the legs in. If you have a wall and you want to back up to the wall, that's always an option. As you press through the four corners of the feet, notice which ones are already overweighted. And see if you can distribute the weight across the four corners of the feet more evenly. Scissor in as though you were in roller skates and you did not want to keep going out into the splits. So the inner thighs engage, inner thighs move back, tailbone lengthens to firm the low belly, hands on the hips, and stretch out towards the front foot. So the tendency here is to collapse your right ribs. So you lengthen the right ribs and stretch the fingertips either to the block, or they can be on the inside of the knee. You'll sometimes see people resting the hand on top of the shin. My problem with that is that a lot of times we put too much weight and then we push on this joint, the knee joint, and it's not always healthy. So if you press it on the inside, if you're not using a block, that's fine. So even though there's fingertips on the block or not, you press the inner knee somewhere into the hand or the arm, and the right arm presses back. Now, as the low belly is spinning a bit towards the floor, the ribs spin up towards the ceiling. Oh. Keep engaging the legs, tailbone long. So inhale is lengthen and strengthen. Exhale is a twist. So triangle is a twist. Oh. And breathe. Top arm can come straight up. Be careful about taking it too far back. If you're still looking down at the floor and the arm's back behind you, you're just torquing your shoulder. So it's more that the arm is an extension out of the shoulder joint. It feels easeful, not a big stretch. And if it's comfortable, look up at the fingertips towards the sky. Stretch the arm over the ear towards the top of your mat and grow longer on the inhale. Exhale, more twist. Ooh. And release the arm. Look down for a revolved triangle. You'll step your back foot up a little bit and turn it in more. The block comes where your left foot would come up, so it's still about hip width apart, and you're facing the front leg. So if there's too much stretch on the front leg, step the back foot up a bit. And I find that if I lift the back heel in the beginning, it gives me a little more space to begin the twist. So the full pose is where you're on the outside of the front foot. Too much for me today. Then once you find your twist and your stability, start to stretch the back heel towards the floor. So you lengthen and strengthen on the inhale. So hug the legs towards the midline, lengthen from tailbone to crown. And on the exhale, the rib spin. Keep the head in line with the sternum for now. Spin with the ribs. And when everything has spun in the direction it needs to, the low belly's going back the opposite way. Then the head can very elegantly and easily turn as far as you want it over the right shoulder. Woo. Inhale, come back to center, release, step back, downward facing dog. Step your left leg up, I think, right? Come into a wide stance, turn the left toes towards the short edge of the mat. The right foot is perpendicular. Yeah, I do that too. I roll back into my heels. So that's where you can feel this, the four corners of the feet, how important it is. And as I've gotten older and older, that's been even more important to keep balance, because as we get into the dotage, the falling thing becomes more of a reality. The block can go inside the leg, or if there's no block, or you're not reaching the block today, the back of the hand presses into the inner knee, and you lengthen the underside. The left side is the side that gets the shortest. So you lengthen it and reach out even as you're hinging from the hips. Just stretch down. Again, this is a twist. So the low belly, particularly the left side of the low belly, is moving back to the left as the rib cage, the heart, is moving up towards the sky. Inhale, you lengthen and strengthen. So you hug the legs and lengthen through the spine. Exhale, the ribs turn up. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, twist. When you've twisted as far as you can go, the head can elegantly look over your right shoulder to the degree that's comfortable for your neck. But sometimes we start the twist with the neck and the ribs never follow. We start with the ribs, start with the heart. And breathe. Top arm can come straight up towards the sky. And then you can swing it around to where it comes over the ear. Yeah, so Debbie, if it gets stuck there sometimes, so if you bring it forward, now spin it up, pull the head of the arm bone back. Do you see how you have much more openness? So I'll show you what Debbie was doing at home. So she came from here and she went from here and it gets stuck. But if you pull in, swing it in, then you've sucked the head of the arm bone into the shoulder socket. And then release towards the floor, step the back foot up. Feet are still railroad track apart. Don't be on the tightrope, otherwise it just makes your life harder. The block can go right under where your back foot would step up. The left hand pulls the outer left hip crease back, and you begin the revolved triangle. So as you're here, scissor the legs. Oh, that's the inhale, lengthen the spine. And exhale, the ribs begin to twist to the left. If you have no mobility, like you can't move in this pose, often these outer hip flexors IT band is very tight. Lift your back heel higher. It gives you a little more space, a little more room. You can even put your hand up on a chair if you need more height. And once you've spun yourself, the low belly's moving back to the right, the ribs, chest, heart moving towards the left. And if your heel is up, you can start to stretch the heel down. Get a good stretch across the back of the calf there. And breathe. And working to stack shoulder on shoulder, that may not go there, but that's the direction. Inhale, release. Exhale, step back, downward facing dog. Lower to your knees to child's pose, knees apart, toes together. Good stretch for the low back here. Inhale, come up and flip yourself over onto your back. So we'll do half happy baby and pigeon on the back, and then a bridge pose. So lie all the way on your back. Oh. Yeah, it feels good, right? Debbie and I both gave a big sigh. It's like, oh, I love it. Knees bent, feet on the floor. All you do here is to get your low back curve, natural anatomical positioning here. As you press the soles of the feet into the earth, isometrically pull them back slightly. Not so much you engage and cramp the hamstrings, but just enough to tilt the hips so the sits bones drop towards the heels, and you get a little low back curve. You have space under your back waist. Then draw your xiphoid to tailbone. The tailbone moves up to the bottom tip of the sternum moves down. Another way to say that is the bottom ribs move towards the pelvis. Robot your arms, bend your elbows, fingertips point towards the sky, the palms face each other. Press into your elbows, lift your shoulder blades off the floor just a smidge and scoot them under you. And then release back to the floor. That gives you a nice little arch in the chest, a lift in the chest here. Breathe. Now notice that you'll change the low back curve's relationship to the floor every time we move the leg, but your goal is to come back to some remembrance of the low back curve. The belly button's dropping towards the spine. Draw the right knee up towards the right shoulder. You can either hold behind the thigh, the shin goes straight up and down perpendicular to the floor, or reach up and take hold of the outer right edge of the foot. The inner right knee hugs the right arm, and the right arm pushes against the knee. So on the inside of your knee there, Debbie, there you go, outside of the foot, yeah. So if you reach around the top of the foot and then the baby toe side of, there you go. It's like kind of winding in and out of the leg. Now notice the right side of your low back curve is pretty much smashed, right? If you push the foot up into the hand, you notice how you can get it a little bit off the floor, at least energetically. And then you keep pulling down, pushing up, pulling down, pushing up. Play that edge, that will go deep into the hip flexor. On your next inhale, cross the shin across the torso, shovel scoop under your calf, and the right elbow can wedge into your inner right thigh, pushing the inner right thigh away from the belly as the left hand pulls the foot up towards the shoulder. It's pigeon on your back. Now notice the low back curve goes away here. If you let the knee come away from you a little bit from the chest, you can get the low back curve up. It's an option to straighten the left leg if you wish. You can even move into full, baby cradle. Wrap. Oh my gosh. Or not. And then even though the deeper you go into this, the low back curve releases, keep trying to pull it back as best you can, even if it's in an energetic form, not in a physical movement. You're moving inside. Bend the left knee if you straighten the left leg. Pull the right knee all the way across the body.
Snug the left knee under it and pull the left knee so your hands are on the outside of each knee, and pull the knees across from each other. So you're going to ride your Harley here. Slide your hand, if you drop your heels towards your bum, your hands are on top of your knees, you can slide the hands down the shins until you can take hold of something. Then flex the feet, lift the shins towards the ceiling, parallel towards the ceiling. Move the knees away from you a bit so you can snuggle your shoulder blades underneath you and get a low back curve back. Now squeeze the knees, press the shins into the earth, and on your next exhale, pull the ankles towards you, even as you're moving the knees away from your chest. Woo. So this will help get into your hips there, Debbie. Yeah, it feels good. Riding the Harley, or the Texans call it the Longhorn. Oh, let go of your legs, stretch your arms in a T position, bump your hips over to the right just a bit, and then drop the legs over to the left. The feet will come to the floor, the knees most likely not. The idea is to keep both shoulder blades down on the floor evenly. One way to help that is to scoot the left shoulder blade over to the left a bit, put it back down, and that will help the right one come back. Oh, so you're still gently squeezing the knees. Inner thighs are moving away from towards the back body, and the sits bones are still pressing back towards the right, towards behind you there. Oh, now let's repeat that all on the other side. Inhale, come back to center, stretch both legs long, arms overhead, and notice, one hip feels a little warm. The other one's waiting with bated breath. All right, come back to knees bent, feet on the ground, anatomical neutral, tip your hips, the sits bones towards the floor, lift the low back off the floor, snuggle your shoulder blades underneath you. And then draw your left knee over towards your left armpit, either hold behind the thigh, or do the wrap where the left arm's on the inside of the knee, hand holds across the top of the foot to the baby toe side. Hug the knee into the arm, and the arm presses back. That goes seesaw principle. So when you're pressing up here, right on the inner knee, you're working where it's working into the hip socket. And notice that you've smashed the low back curve out of the left side. See if you can get some remembrance of it. You have to engage the core to push the foot into the hand a little bit more and pull the baby toe side of the foot back down towards the floor. Straightening the right leg is an option, or keeping it bent. I always bend it before I go into the baby cradle or pigeon on the back, just because it relieves the hips a little bit. Cross the torso with the left shin, shovel scoop underneath. Now your left elbow wedges into the inner left thigh to push. So you're not holding the foot here, Debbie, you're just shovel scooping. So your left elbow can come lower. Pull it down, yeah, like this, like that, right, yeah. And now if you pull down to where your hand's holding on the back of your leg, come down a bit more so it's like this. Then you see how the elbow now can push your inner thigh away from you. Now use your right hand and pull the heel towards you a bit more too. Now you're feeling good? Oh yeah. And again, it's always optional to straighten the other leg or not. Where is your low back curve here? It's a where's Waldo kind of thing. Always ask, where is my low back curve? When we flatten the low back curve, we're not honoring the natural curve of the spine. So all of those exercise teachers who tell you to flatten your back against the floor, really not studied the spine enough for my liking anyway. If your right leg is bent, straight, bend it. Draw the left knee all the way across the body to the right side, and then snuggle the left knee up in behind it. Hands, if the heels come down by your hips, it's a little easier to move into this. The hands on the top of the knee, slide them down the shin to hold somewhere on the outside of the shin or ankle. Flex the feet. Move the knees a little bit away from the chest so you can get a low back curve. Snuggle the shoulder blades under the back. Drop the belly button to the spine, tailbone to xiphoid. And as you inhale, push the shins up into the hands. Shins come about parallel to the floor unless it's too intense. Keep flexing the feet and pulling the ankles, the feet towards your shoulders. So you want to widen, pull them towards you as the knees come away from you. Ah, this does it. So this is a kind of a Gomukhasana pose. It's done sitting upright, but I've been, since the whole world is up on its ear and reversed, I've started reversing a lot of poses, I think. Let go of the legs, stretch your arms in a T position. Just bump your hips over to the left a little bit so you have room to drop the legs over to the right. Oh. Snuggle your shoulder blades underneath you by moving the right shoulder blade a little more out to the right. You can use your elbow to help you lift that and scooch it. Technical term. So as much as the legs are moving down towards the floor, the ribs are moving towards the left. And again, the low belly and the legs are moving towards the floor as the ribs, heart, chest, gaze move towards the left. And inhale your way back up to center. Oh, shake off and stretch out. And one last bridge before Shavasana. Bend the knees, arms in robot. Take a breath. As you press into the feet, the inner thighs move towards the heels, tailbone lengthens. Press into your forearms and lift your hips just enough to where you can snuggle your shoulder blades underneath you a little bit more. The sternum starts to move towards the chin as the chin pulls away from the sternum. Take a breath as you press down, rise up. Inhale, strengthen, lengthen, and exhale, open. If you feel any pinch in the low back, you need to use the legs more. The mantra, the legs are the governor of the low back, is so important here. So the legs are pressing down, the inner thighs move towards the floor as the tailbone lengthens and strengthens through the legs. Then there's more lift, more opening in the upper back. Exhale, release. So it's that whole theme of the steadfastness. The legs are often behind the scenes, release back to the floor. And do any movements you want to do before final relaxation. So often we think in a back bend, the showy part is the back bending, but if the legs are not steady behind the scenes, keeping the low back healthy, the back bend will not happen, or it will happen in pain. Who wants it? As you settle in, let me turn the lights down for Debbie. And find an easy, comfortable position. Rest is so important after we've done something challenging, difficult, engaging. With each exhale, your bones sink into the earth. With each inhale, the skin, muscles, tissues soften. As the limbs release and soften, the rib cage releases, organs release and soften, heart opens, Swallow to soften the throat. Part the back teeth slightly, part the lips slightly. Hollows of the cheeks soften back and down. Ears and temples soften. The eyeballs settle back into the cradle of the eye sockets as all the muscles around the eyes soften. Space between the eyebrows, the third eye center, softens all the way into the center of the skull. Forehead and scalp softens. Slowly begin to deepen your breath. As the breath deepens, bring gentle movement to your fingers and toes, hands and feet, stretching your arms and legs in any way that feels good. Yawning, stretching the muscles in the face. Draw your knees into your chest. Roll to your side and rest there, curled up in your arms. For this last few final moments, enjoy the nowhere to go, nothing to do moment. Be present fully in this moment, if even for a few breaths. On your next inhale, rolling a little more towards the floor, use the strength of your arms to press yourself up to a seated position. And sit well. Draw your palms together in front of your heart center. Thank you guys so much for joining me, Debbie here. So I'm not alone, all of you guys.
the online audience. Namaste.